There is a machine that has been running for 70 years. It has never fired. It has never misfired. It has never been turned off. And it was not designed to fire. It was designed to exist, to be seen existing, to be understood as a machine whose purpose is entirely fulfilled by the fact that everyone knows it is there. The name of the machine is Mutually Assured Destruction. The acronym is MAD. The people who named it that way did it on purpose. They were not being subtle. What I want to show you over these 3 episodes is why this machine is one of the most counterintuitive, philosophically profound, and genuinely terrifying achievements in the history of human civilization, and why, in a world that keeps asking whether it still works, that question may be the most important one we can ask. Before mutually assured destruction, the question was simple: how do you stop a great power from attacking you? The classical answer was deterrence through strength. Build an army large enough that attacking you costs more than any conceivable gain. This is as old as warfare itself. Vegetius, a Roman military writer of the 4th century, put it this way: Si vis pacem, para bellum. If you want peace, prepare for war. But after Hiroshima and Nagasaki in August of 1945, a new problem entered the world. The problem was this: a single bomb could now destroy a city. Within a few years, a single bomb could destroy not just a city, but everything within 30 miles of it, poisoning the soil and the water and the air for generations afterward. The classical deterrence logic began to break down. Because if one side acquired nuclear weapons and the other side had not yet built enough to retaliate, then the side with the weapons had an overwhelming incentive to use them first, before the other side could respond. In nuclear strategy, this is called the first strike problem, and the first strike problem, if left unsolved, makes nuclear war almost inevitable. The people thinking about this problem in the late 1940s and 1950s, at RAND, at the Pentagon, at the Atomic Energy Commission, were some of the most unusual people who have ever worked for a government. Herman Kahn, the inspiration for Dr. Strangelove, wrote a book in 1960 called On Thermonuclear War. It calmly calculated the number of acceptable American deaths in a nuclear exchange as though discussing a budget. Bernard Brodie, perhaps the clearest thinker of the group, made the foundational observation as early as 1946. That sentence contains the entire logic of MAD in 24 words. The weapon exists not to be used but to prevent use. The machine is the threat, and the threat only functions if it is credible. Mutually assured destruction is not a single thing. It is a system with 5 interdependent components. Remove any one of them and the system fails. And failure in this context means nuclear war. The first pillar is deterrence capability. Both sides must actually possess weapons capable of destroying the other's civilization. Not just some cities, not just the military. Everything. The population, the infrastructure, the capacity to function as a modern state. If one side's nuclear arsenal is insufficient to credibly threaten this level of destruction, deterrence fails. At the height of the Cold War, the United States and Soviet Union together possessed approximately 70,000 nuclear warheads. 70,000. To give you a sense of scale, the bomb that destroyed Hiroshima killed approximately 80,000 people instantly, and another 60,000 in the months that followed. The weapons in the American and Soviet arsenals at peak Cold War were many times more powerful than the Hiroshima bomb. Many times. One Ohio-class submarine alone carries enough warheads to end modern civilization on a continent. The second pillar is second strike capability. This is the critical one. This is the one that solves the first strike problem. Second strike capability means that even after absorbing a full nuclear attack, even after your cities are gone, your leadership is dead, Your command infrastructure is destroyed, you still have enough weapons in enough hidden and distributed locations that you can retaliate and destroy the attacker's civilization. This is the guarantee that launching first accomplishes nothing. If I destroy you first, your submarines will still be in the ocean. Your missiles buried in hardened silos in Montana will still be armed. The dead hand of your destroyed civilization will reach back and kill me anyway. The United States solved the second strike problem through the nuclear triad. Land-based intercontinental ballistic missiles in hardened silos, submarine-launched ballistic missiles in submarines that cannot be located, and nuclear-armed bombers that can be recalled until the moment they release. No first strike, however comprehensive, can locate and destroy all three legs of this triad simultaneously. The retaliation is therefore guaranteed. The third pillar is communication and command. Both sides must know at all times that the other's leadership is rational, in control of its weapons, and capable of receiving a message. This is why the Moscow-Washington hotline, the famous red phone, though it was actually a teletype, was established in 1963, directly after the Cuban Missile Crisis, not to make friends, to prevent accidental war. If one side's radar detects incoming missiles and cannot reach the other side's leadership to determine if it is real or a malfunction, the pressure to launch on warning becomes unbearable, and it almost failed. In 1983, a Soviet early warning satellite reported 5 incoming American missiles. A lieutenant colonel named Stanislav Petrov, whose job was to relay the warning to Soviet leadership for a retaliatory launch, looked at the data, decided the reading was too sparse to be a real American first strike. The Americans would send hundreds, not 5, and logged it as a system malfunction. He was right. It was a malfunction caused by a rare alignment of sunlight reflecting off clouds in a way the satellite misread as a missile launch. Stanislav Petrov, a man most people have never heard of, may have prevented nuclear war with a judgment call. The fourth pillar is rational leadership. This is the most fragile pillar. All of MAD's logic depends on both sides behaving rationally, on the assumption that the decision-makers who hold the launch codes understand that using them means their own civilization's destruction. A leadership that does not care about its own survival, or that calculates it can survive a nuclear exchange when it cannot, represents a catastrophic failure condition. There were moments during the Cold War when this pillar wobbled. Nixon, during the final days of Watergate, was reportedly in such psychological distress that Defense Secretary James Schlesinger quietly instructed the Joint Chiefs to confirm with him before executing any nuclear launch order from the president. This was not strictly legal. It was a reasonable precaution by a man who looked at the commander-in-chief and saw someone he was not certain could be trusted with the most consequential decision in human history. The fifth pillar is strategic communication. Both sides must make their capability and their intention to retaliate absolutely clear. Deterrence that is secret is not deterrence. If your enemy does not know you can destroy them or does not believe you will, the deterrence fails. This is why nuclear tests were conducted publicly, often with foreign observers invited. This is why military parades displayed missiles. This is why declaratory policy, official statements about when and how nuclear weapons would be used, was so carefully crafted and so publicly stated. Remove any one of these. Deterrence fails. Add them all together. You have the most stable peace between great powers in recorded history. The longest period without direct war between the major European and American powers since the fall of Rome. A peace maintained entirely by the credible promise of extinction. We have one real-world test of MAD's logic. One moment when the machine was actually stressed. One moment when the decision-makers on both sides knew, with absolute clarity, that the wrong choice meant the end of the world. October 1962. The Cuban Missile Crisis. 13 days. The sequence of events is known. In October 1962, American U-2 spy planes photographed Soviet nuclear missile installations under construction in Cuba, 90 miles from the coast of Florida. President Kennedy faced a menu of options ranging from airstrikes to naval blockade to diplomacy. His military advisors, including the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, General Maxwell Taylor, pushed for airstrikes. Kennedy chose the blockade, which he called a quarantine, because a blockade is technically an act of war, and prepared for the possibility that the Soviets would not back down. What the American public did not know at the time, and what historians have only partially reconstructed since, is how many points during those 13 days the crisis came within a single human decision of becoming nuclear war. On October 27th, Black Saturday, the crisis's most dangerous day, a U-2 reconnaissance plane was shot down over Cuba by a Soviet surface-to-air missile. Kennedy's advisors had agreed beforehand that if a U-2 was shot down, the United States would retaliate militarily. Kennedy refused to retaliate. His instinct, correct as it turned out, was that the escalation logic was moving too fast and that restraint was the only exit. Also, on that same day, a Soviet submarine, B-59, operating under radio blackout and unable to contact Moscow, was being harassed by American depth charges designed to force it to surface. The captain, Valentin Savitsky, believed nuclear war had already begun. He prepared to launch the submarine's nuclear torpedo, a weapon that would have destroyed the American ships and almost certainly triggered full-scale nuclear war. He needed the agreement of two officers, his executive officer and the flotilla commander, Vasili Arkhipov, who happened to be on board. Arkhipov refused. Savitsky did not launch. Vasili Arkhipov, another man most people have never heard of, may also have prevented nuclear war. The crisis resolved when Khrushchev agreed to remove the missiles from Cuba in exchange for an American promise not to invade Cuba and a secret agreement, kept secret for decades, to remove American Jupiter missiles from Turkey. MAD had worked. Both sides had the weapons. Both sides had the second strike capability. Both sides had, ultimately, rational leadership. And both sides had backed down from the edge. But the margin had been very thin, and it had depended, at multiple critical junctures, not on the machine working perfectly, but on individual human beings making the right call in conditions of extreme uncertainty, extreme fear, and extreme time pressure. The machine does not run itself. The Cold War ended. The Soviet Union dissolved. The missiles were still there. Today, 9 nations have nuclear weapons. The bipolar clarity of the Cold War, 2 superpowers, 2 rational governments, 1 set of rules, has given way to something more complicated, something more dangerous, something we don't have a tested framework for. In Part 2, we will look at the arms of MAD in their current form, and at the moment in 2022 when a man in Moscow threatened to use weapons that he would immediately destroy himself by using, and what that paradox tells us about the limits of the machine. Because the question of whether MAD still holds is not theoretical. It is not historical. It is the operative question of the current geopolitical moment, and the answer is complicated.